the most beautiful things always happens at the intersections of domains. If you're not connecting domains, you're really missing out on a lot of creativity.
I'm getting like a psychedelic vibe from here because, like, as I'm saying, I'm trying to relate my own experience through like these vehicles that are the language, right, to you guys, and you guys hear it, and then you guys unpack it in your mind, and then map onto your own experience. I think it's just so cool.
No, I feel it. I feel the vibe you're emitting too.
Let's go. Let's go. I love it.
So last week's conversation call went very well. I feel like lots of things, lots of ideas, and for me, gave me a lot to think about in terms of the way I want to lead the next challenges, but also just the way, I want to format these calls. So I'm going to start with just a bunch of insights, a lot of things that I've brought together from the past weeks or from observations of other people around me, conversations with you guys that I've had. And so I'm striving to present the best content possible in regards to where you guys are currently at. And so, yeah, that's the goal. And I know that the community will benefit overall. So I think that I love the flow and I love where this is going. So I just want to start off with that. So with that being said, I want to talk about this class. It's going to be on creativity and a practical path. So how to make creativity practical. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. And I see it very much. I've seen it with, friends around me. I've seen it just in general, in online social media. And also I've seen it within myself. So battling with, you get these insights, inspirations to create things, you have that drive, that motivation, that idea, and then you begin to build it, and maybe you finish it, but then it's gone, or maybe you don't even get to finish it. So I think I had this conversation with Paul a little bit, trying to figure out where, what are we really trying to create? Because we were having a discussion just on, what if it isn't writing? Because Paul was really into writing, and he, questions started to come up because his attention was being drawn away from writing, and he was just wondering, is it writing or could it be something else? So I want to, this is kind of coming from the conversation I had with Paul. At the end of the day, you want to just have, it's a medium, but the source is you. So I think when it comes to creativity, it's always important to recognize that the source is you, that you are the source. And so not trying to put so many limitations on that. So you don't have to confine your creativity to one specific medium, whether it be writing, whether it be video. I believe that creativity is actually a very loose concept, that if we can allow it to be loose, and if we can allow it to shape us, and us engage in it and be led by it, we can discover a whole new perspective, a whole new way of interacting with the world, and also just, creating something stable. And that's the goal here for this presentation. I want it to be about creating stability and being able to show up and not be moved by external circumstance. And so not letting external circumstance dictate the way that you create, but rather you imposing your will on the outside, you creating. And so I myself, even these past 2 weeks, my intuition I haven't gotten as many insights. I haven't been getting too many ideas. I'm in the process now of now it's action. Now it's about, okay, I got the ideas, and that inspiration has faded. And a lot of people get scared because the inspiration fades, the energy might not be there. But that's just a sign to that, the universe is like, it's in your hands now. You got to create, you got to build. So those are just a few things, pieces that I want to throw out there, and then we're going to go through it and just assimilate it all. Anything that you guys want to add so far? All good? Okay. So creativity as a journey, not an escape. That is the first thing I want to mention, which is that this is a lifelong journey. This is a lifelong process, and not having it be something that you're escaping your reality from. Because I know a lot of people often, even myself, there's a struggle between, you know, having your full-time job or having a practical endeavor, you know, paying the bills basically, and balancing that with the creative flow of I want to go and create. You know, sometimes we feel like our job gets in the way of our creativity. And so I want to really make it clear that your creativity, if anything, should enhance your practicality. It should enhance your ability to work on the day to day. Because, like I mentioned earlier, you don't need to confine yourself to anything in specific. It doesn't have to be a specific medium. You can take lessons from where you're at, and you can begin to develop systems. You can begin to develop habits. You can begin to develop just different ways of being and approaching other people, etc. That can all be seen in a very creative light. So it comes down to redefining creativity. I'm kind of curious, what do you guys, how do you guys define creativity? We can start with Lucas, and then we'll go around to Do, and then Paul. And I have Fume coming in right now. Give me 1 second.
Hey, I think creativity is defined by how much inspiration do we receive. I know it can be through reading, through art, through travels, through experiences, through failure, through every single thing that we can absorb, you know. And I think over time it really helps us to shape that kind of creativity. You know, it's like new connections in our brain. You know, it's like connecting neurons, you know, and the more trying to, you know, it could be even flavors, it could be any sort of experiences, good or bad, that the goal is to make sure that those connections are appearing in the brain for the first time to get this permanently created and to be able to create more possibilities. So I think the more we keep nourishing our brain with as many things as we can, you know, it really helps us in the long run to have more creativity on a single and same topic.
Awesome. I like that. So Lucas, you're putting an emphasis on creativity is making connections. It can be anything as long as it's almost like a nourishing practice where as you connect more things, life becomes more joyful, more fun.
Yeah, it's neuronal, I don't know if you can say neuronal.
Yeah, neural.
Like neural connections, you know, it's like always trying to build more and more and more connections.
Awesome. And Fume, you just arrived. Just want to give you a quick recap. We were just talking about creativity. And right now I'm asking the guys, how do they define creativity? And then we can really, we can go from there. I'm kind of curious to see what everybody thinks, and then create a synthesis together that can benefit everybody. So right now, Lucas just shared something. We're going to go to Do, then Paul, and then you can go ahead, Fume, and just define creativity. So go ahead, Do.
So I actually have questions rather than opinion, like because myself, I'm not sure either what creativity is. So I'm a photographer. Sometimes a lot of my photos, like I take inspirations from other pictures, you know, like patterns and frames and certain elements of other people's work that I really like, and I try to replicate it. So I don't know if does creativity have to mean original, or can it be derivative of other people's work? And is it
Can I answer something to this?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it goes with emotions, especially like photography. You know, like I had my dad that used to work in fashion industry and that used to know a lot of big photographers. It's something that you always have been very, very sensitive to emotions throughout pictures. You know, what are the emotions that you can see on the model, on the light, on the sky? on the landscape behind it. And I think, if you do a black and white, if you do a color, what kind of, if it's going to be argentic or numeric pictures, it's all about the emotions that you feel while taking the picture, the light that's going to come through the lenses, and the story that you're trying to tell to the people that are going to see those pictures, and I think this can apply to not only fashion, but again, it can be like, in French, we have this French way of saying nature morte, is like when you take pictures or photographies without involving anybody. It's just like it's going to be a food, a plant, a landscape, without even involving like a character. And I think there is all the angle that you're going to choose, etc. So I think it comes with pair with emotions. What do we feel? Does it make us feel hungry, angry, upset, happy, emotional? And I think the creativity sticks with the emotions that we feel, that gonna stick as some of the memory that we're gonna keep from that moment.
Awesome. That's a great point. And I think it applies a lot to photography and your work, do. It is about emotion. It is about also perspective, through a shift in perspective. That is really what I think it also relates to what Lucas mentioned earlier with creativity. It's connections in the brain. So when you're able to make a connection, an association between one thing and the other, you're basically saying that they're similar, even though they appear different at the same time. And that's basically a shift in perspective. It's being able to see the same thing, but now differently. And so does it have to be original? I don't think so. I think originality, in fact, isn't a requirement for creativity. I believe that I think nobody is original at the end of the day. We're all taking in insights. We're all taking in different perspectives. And so I believe if we had to define it in terms of, the action, it's how I would call it a synthesis. Creativity is the ability to synthesize various fields and create something new. And then also the result then from that will be the emotion. Because when you have achieved that and you have synthesized it in a way that is, very well, and it leads to emotion. That's the natural result. And so, yeah, I believe that that's a great connection. It's almost like, so how can I be creative? It's, be a synthesizer. And then why do I want to be creative? So to provoke emotion, to move people. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything anybody else wants to say aside from that. All set. Okay. Does that answer your question, dude? How do you feel after hearing that?
Yeah. I like it. I think like some of the photos that I take, like I just go to the same spot that other people go, Yes, it's different time of the day, different models, but I feel like that's almost like a mechanical aspect of it, where I just show up, I do step 1, step 2, step 3, so it's almost like, do you consider it's creative if it can be written down in the manual and just say do step 1, 2, 3, 4? Or is that considered like for example, like people like to crap on like Hollywood movies that are very formulaic, or like, music that is very like copy paste for like mainstream consumption. Would you call those creative work?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I would say the why and what Lucas mentioned. And I'm going to give an example because I think this will resonate a lot with the work that we've been doing together. So there's the technicalities, and then there's also the creativity. And so the technicalities are, and like, they exist everywhere, like in social dancing, dude, there's specific patterns or specific ways of doing things. But what determines a great dancer, I feel like a lot of people always say, the way they make them feel, the connection. What do the partners say? Oh, he's fun. So like, you can do the mechanics, but it's about how you feel them. Another great example would be right now, there are a lot of steps in the restaurant industry that you have to, a lot of procedures that seem very mechanical in a way, but when you're able to do them, it leads to a person feeling. And so there's lots of systems that we implement at the restaurant, and every single interaction is designed for a reason, is there for a reason. And at the end of the day, we hope that the guest leaves feeling, first off, acknowledged, cared for, and also, I think, like Lucas said, like they felt something. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, Lucas, but to that point of, can something be creative if it is mechanical? I think that is my perspective.
Now, I think if we do the same, if how do I say that? If we want the things to change, we have to change. Like I think landscapes, decor, air, temperature. Like I think it's about diversity. The world is so diverse. That I think it's unlimited the inspiration that we can use from. And again, I say this by living in 7 different countries. I think that's how I can see how much it brought my perspective so much deeper, because it just never stopped. And just the habits, the culture, the people, the way of doing things, the lights. Again, like there is a lot of things like this. I see after I understand that it might be a mechanical process, like to be able maybe to record the same things over and over and over to be able to compare them if I don't know the whole story. And of course, there is no judgment on that. But I think this is what helps me to nowadays in my career to be more of a creator, to be able to have unlimited ideas and always like a plan B, always like a plan C, always like something to go after, and I don't even have to force it anymore. It just come to me, kind of organically at the right time. When I'm done with a chapter, the next one comes in, and I enjoy this. That's why I think I try to continue to larger my vision and my perspective as hard as possible, or as much as possible.
And I think one more point I want to add too, it's about how do you feel while taking pictures too. If you do feel like it's mechanical, then maybe that has more to do with your relationship to the work than the work itself. So I think that's another interesting point.
I like it. Yeah, you read my mind, because I was gonna go to raise this point. Like for example, like I take like moon photos, and to me it's very mechanical. You plan the moon alignment, you show up, you kind of know the camera settings, you just show up at the right spot, and then you take the photos. But for the people who are viewing my work, if they haven't done it before, they just thought that, man, this is really beautiful, it's so creative. So it's funny that, like, it depends on the perspective. Like to me, like I feel like it's totally mechanical, but to the person who's are unaware of the technicals, they really appreciate, and they just think that it's creative. So I just I raise that point because it really depends on the person who interprets the work. So yeah.
No, I love it. I think that goes to a point almost that I want to draw back to the topic of practicality. I mean, I believe that creativity should be practical. I believe that creativity should not be complex. I believe that at the core, we are already creative. And in fact, we are creating at every moment. And so to make something for yourself, you might think it's mechanical. But at the same time, what you have done is you have simplified the process, and you understand it very well. And so there's beauty in simplicity. And that means that will allow you to just, create more, maybe implement more changes, more perspectives, like Lucas mentioned, diversity. So I think that within itself is an important point. Sometimes, the greatest work doesn't have to be too complicated. And so, yeah, I mean, hopefully that's a good point that can help you guys out. But anybody else want to mention anything before we move over to Paul? All right, go ahead, Paul, if you want. How do you define creativity based on what has just happened, or whatever, Raw?
I actually think I'm going to kind of piggyback off of Du's line of questioning. Um, just when you first asked the question, me too. Like all I had were questions.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that the word creative implies that you have to create something, so there has to be a product. But if you do something like that, then I also wonder, like, would you consider dance a product? Dance is expressive. Is it really a product? If you have something like culinary or photography, that's not necessarily expressive. I mean, it could be, but it's not necessarily expressive all the time. So would that mean that it's not creative? I mean, it's a product. There's passion. Um, there was one other idea that I wanted to explore. Product, expression. Um, I don't know. Like that's kind of like where my mind goes to. Um, what is the nature of creativity, and is it separate from something like artistic? Um, photography, it doesn't necessarily have to be creative or artistic uh, in the sense that it's capturing something. So it's not necessarily creating something, it's capturing something. And so I wonder about this. I wonder if there are differences, um, if those differences are meaningful, if there really aren't any differences at all, if it's just semantic and pedantry. Potentially, I don't know. Um, but I think it's a fascinating um, question to kind of ponder. Uh, because if let's say something actually isn't creative, well then how would that be defined? So there's something to that. Um, so to actually answer the question, how would I define creativity? I'm actually
Mhm.
not sure. I'm gonna have to think about that because I think that there could be important differences potentially.
Yeah.
So overall, I find that fascinating.
No, yeah, that's. I think I will. So I'm gonna do something where I'm gonna bring the different definitions through this conversation and add to the idea and the concept of creativity. So through Lucas, I can see that creativity is connection, and I have seen that through my experience. It's about connecting, two unlike things and making them seem like. And so what does that do? I mean, that also leads to connection between human beings, and I think at the end of the day that's the point. Being able to connect with somebody then leads to emotion, because that leads to a feeling of oneness, a feeling of feeling understood. So whether it be positive or negative, like the emotion that is being shared and presented through the work, it at least is it is it is bringing everybody at an equal playing field. It is really removing a lot of barriers. Um, so those are 2 points. It is the connection of it's just connections in the brain. We could say that, and it is also something that evokes emotion. And I believe it also, as Lucas said, it is a nourishing practice, because that feeling of being able to create emotions and to move people. And then in reference to dues, is this current conversation creative? I believe so, because um, it's a synthesis right here. What we're doing is we have to be able to really narrow down this concept. I would like to explore other perspectives and really hit the problems, so that at the end of the day we can come down to, it's like harmonization, synthesization. That is basically the key. The key to creativity. Harmonization is bringing two unlike things and harmonizing them together. It's an act of it's almost like a healing act. It's almost like a nourishing act. So, I mean, I see it on the day to day. For me to be able to transfer my skills in psychology or just anything and put it into another space where, you know, psychology isn't really emphasized, to be able to do that to me is a very creative act, because that opens up doorways. It opens up so many doors, so many opportunities. So going back, I don't want to expand too much. Going back to Paul's point, you know, product expression, the way I think about it is business creation. Those two things are something that I've been thinking about. You know, there's two reasons. There's a dual approach to creation. You know, you could create out of inspiration, and that is just raw energy, or you can create out of business, out of service, and that is also more grounded and not as colorful. But either way, you are aiding, whether you're on the more expressive side or whether you're more on the service side. So this conversation within itself, I want to create a new perspective that is both business and creativity, because on the business side you have the dry, really emotionless, transactional aspect, and then on the creative side you have the more colorful but not so grounded reality. So I think what we're doing right now is, you know, we're asking those questions. You know, what is creativity? What differentiates the product versus the expression, et cetera, et cetera. So I refine it down to an approach, and so I think this can be very helpful. And that would be the integrative approach, the ability to accumulate experiences and grow as an individual. And I think this is literally going to Dude's question. Is living creative the interaction between the observer, that is awareness, and the observed thoughts, emotions, sensations, the feminine? So yeah, I think that falls right in line. The integrative approach is the ability to accumulate experiences, and I believe that is the subjective side, living and experiencing, kind of like the feminine approach of living and going through it and being and flowing. And then the more masculine approach, which is the more detached builder of those experiences. So then what is the result? Well, the result is a much more competent individual, an individual who can relate to anybody, an individual who is not restrained by labels, an individual who is also of service and growing continuously, constantly challenging, and also constantly harmonizing. So I believe that is the epitome of our next evolution. How can we bring everybody together, and how can I break the walls that block the expression of an individual? And so that played out very beautifully, I believe. Anything that you guys want to add before we go on to Fume? All right, I think we're chilling. We can go ahead with you, bro.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Definition of creativity, how I would define it. From what I heard in the conversation, I think Lucas and as well as you, Lucid, I think you guys already sort of touched upon creativity from the angle that, you know, I perceive it as well. I think it's the connections between, you know, diverse domains, your ability to be able to connect various domains that seem very disconnected, but be able to join that together. Because I think we live in a world where reality sort of segmented off, right? So when you go to in school, there's like, you know, a computer science field, there's a business field, an economics field, an accounting field, right? So they're telling like, what industry do you want to study in, essentially? But in reality, like nature is not like disconnected, it's whole, right? If you start in one side of things, you'll find yourself in another side of things. Like I'll give you as an example personally. So I'm a developer, right? And I write code. And when I was building one of my a project I was working on. I started off with the back end, and eventually I found myself doing front end work, and I realized I need to dig more into that and learn about front end. And the more I was into front end, I started to realize that I need to learn about design in order to make my website look better, right? And eventually you'll learn that you need marketing in order to promote yourself. So the deeper you go, you find that life and reality is interconnected, essentially. And the idea that it's all fragmented pieces, and that you stick to your lane is not really real, essentially. And the people who make novel contributions to the world are people who are able to draw these connections between these disconnected domains and seemingly disconnected domains. Like, for example, I was working and I heard a story of a young lady who was studying like neuroscience, and then she started to pick up computer science, and now she's more of like a data analyst on neuroscience data, studying the brain and how it functions, and basically writing algorithms, to process, and see what the connections are between the data sets that she's getting. So I think the most beautiful things always happens at the intersections of domains. And I think, like, if you're not connecting domains, you're really missing out on a lot of creativity in the world.
I love it. I think that anything anybody wants to add really quick, because we just went through everybody. So my question to you guys is this shaping, I mean, mostly to Do and to Paul, has this been helpful? Has this been eye-opening in any way?
I would say so. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm still gonna have to think about this quite some more, just because I think it's fascinating and something worth pondering. But absolutely, I mean, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different people with various stances, and that's very interesting, especially because we come from diverse backgrounds. And so to understand and hear about how different creatives kind of approach the subject, um, I mean, there's something very real to that. Um, I mean, I'm assuming that if you extrapolated this, um, I mean, I would find that fascinating to get greater insight into, for example, maybe an architect. What would an architect consider creative, or an engineer? And these aren't really people that we would consider artsy. And I think that the word artsy would be um, conflated with creative, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And so I find stuff like that, considering stuff like that, to be fascinating.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Paul.
It's funny. I was thinking, like, while you were talking, I was also thinking about mentioning architecture too. When you see those new, all those new buildings worldwide and how they're pushing the limits of engineering, or how they've been inspiring themselves to create the bullet train in Japan from a bird, right? Or how they design planes that are that are very inspired from the wing shape of a bird, from their nose and so on. And I think we're all related to the mother nature at first. And I think I was very agree with what Fume said about transmuting from industries or from others, to be able to make those connections as well. And I think it's unlimited because we see things every day, we experience things every day, and it just never ends. And I think this is the beauty of creativity in general, to nourish ourselves this way. That's it.
Thank you. Do how you feeling after all these thoughts?
I like it. I feel like, as a matter of fact, right now, the words that are coming out of my mouth is like a creative act, because I kind of really don't know what's going to come out. Like, you have to know the technicals, right? Which are the syntax of the English language and the vocabulary and whatnot. But you don't really know what you're going to say until you say it, and then you just like in real time observe it, right? And I think that's like I'm getting like a psychedelic vibe from here, because like as I'm saying, I'm trying to relate my own experience through like these vehicles that are the language, right, to you guys, and you guys hear it, and then you guys unpack it in your mind and then map onto your own experience. I think it's just so cool.
Yeah. No, I feel it. I feel the vibe you're emitting too, because I'm feeling the trippy vibes right now.
Let's go. Let's go. I love it.
I can sync. But no, yeah, I will say I'll add to that, and then I'm gonna try to grab everything and confine it to this one thing that will then lead to something you guys can implement and just like break through some walls. So the point is to, yes, use the technicalities, learn the mechanisms, learn the systems, but the systems are not there to be venerated as the source. The systems came from a source. At the end of the day, there was always a beginning, and there was a moment of impulse and moment of inspiration, and that led to something beautiful. And so the systems were developed in retrospect. They were developed to begin to replicate those same instances. And so the product wasn't so much the systems are a product of creativity. So the moment that we start to see creativity and define it as the mechanisms themselves is the moment that we lose touch with the source, the beginning of it all, which is you. We could call it the universe. We could call it God. But that is the alpha and the omega. That's like the way it comes back. You know, it begins there and it ends there, because there's a process. And I had this conversation with Frankie Martinez. He's a very well-known salsa teacher, dancer in the space. And he was talking about how, and he also had a lot of training in Zen Buddhism. He was talking about how the way he teaches, it's always been about using the moves as a mechanism to higher development, higher consciousness. So at the end of the day, it's not about the moves themselves, because you can find yourself if you do that. And I see this in the dance space specifically. It's a very creative space, artistic space, right? A lot of people like to replicate and copy. A lot of people like to just try. They see it as a very mechanical thing, mathematical thing, which it is. But then it's much more than that. And so he said, you know, you begin and you have fun. And then you get serious and you learn the systems. But then after that, you realize that it wasn't ever about the systems. It was about you having fun. And so you go back to having fun. And so now you are free of the systems and the technicalities themselves. And now you can begin to actually synthesize even more. So it's a process of awakening, and then surrendering to the technicalities, and then once again awakening to the truth. It's a beautiful cycle. So when it comes to speaking, you know, even the point that Du said, you know, right now I'm just speaking out of the moment. Yes, I have my outline. Yes, all of this, but this is all raw. This is all in an effort we're balancing chaos and order, and that's really, you know, treading the middle path. That's the thing that I'm really thinking about. But I'm now going to go to the implementation. Does anybody want to add anything to what was just said before we do that?
Yeah, I could. I have one small idea that I'm kind of wondering about. Probably not for discussion, but I'll just kind of put it out there.
Yeah.
So creation. Could we learn anything about what creation is, what creativity is, by looking at the opposite? And I'm wondering, would the exact opposite be destruction? And could you not have some circumstance that destruction would be creative in like a regenerative sense? I haven't really been able to come up with an example yet, but that was the new idea that kind of just popped into my head within like the last minute or so. Something like that.
No, yeah, this will be, I guess this will go a little, I'll have to go get a little esoteric with you because I believe that that's where my understanding comes from. Destruction and creation, I believe, are really just two sides of the same coin. Sometimes one has to destroy, like, I mean, if you think about it, when you're creating and you're making connections, what are you doing? You're also destroying limitations. When you make connections, you destroy the gaps between the connections, the barriers, the mental barriers that one puts up. And so within itself, creation can be a destructive act. And so what could be the opposite of creation? I believe that it would be more so if we look at nature is the greatest teacher, as Fume mentioned. Degeneration only happens when there is no change. An inability to flow with change, I believe, is the example of, or the opposite of, creation. Because if you're not in flux, well, you're decaying. And even with that, within there, it could get a little confusing because we were just taught, isn't decay destruction, et cetera, et cetera. I believe so, but I think that when we're talking about the individual himself, I believe the worst thing that one can do is to just not be. That's really what it comes down to. Not being yourself, not being true to the moment, and that's when we start to see, when the mind comes in and it traps you with limitations. That's when the mind begins to take over and then doubt creeps in. I believe that is the opposite of creativity. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that.
Okay, yeah, I something just clicked, and let me see if I can try to land this metaphorical plane.
Let's do it.
So destroying limitation. So as you were, like, before you even started this riff, Jose, I was thinking of like an example of like recent interaction I have with this girl, like I'm thinking of all of our previous interactions. Like I just wanted her validation so much. I want like something from her, like, so I feel like I never really connected with her when we ever be having conversations. But the most recent one that I had, after she kind of like made her intent clear on what she wants the relationship to be, I feel like our conversation after that point was just like, I feel like we were really connecting, because I let go of like what I wanted from her, which is the limitation, right? Like before that, I placed a limitation on what her response should be. And that kind of like limit our connection, but once that limitation is lifted off, now there's no expectations. We just like sharing truly like how we feel. I feel like we connected just so much deeper. And I'm trying to link it to what you just said, like it's like that relationship, after not expecting anything from it, right? It's creative because you are not aiming to just for the output to be like one form, like you just flow with it. I don't know if I land that plane or not. It's just kind of like
No, yeah,
this
it's
like
all right.
amalgamations of thoughts and trying to like link together.
No,
So
I love it. I love that moment of like raw, like epiphany. That is like, that's what I want. First off, that's beautiful. No, I think I will add something, and then that will be something for you to ponder on, and then we'll land a plane. We'll finish it off. So, think about co-creation, and think about how through every interaction, every human interaction, every interaction with you in the universe, because we have a dual existence. Any interaction is a co-creative process. You are either co-creating with another individual through conversation, or you are co-creating with the universe through action in the real world. So when you stop trying to confine it with the mind, because the mind tries to plan, and sometimes it's not time for the mind to come in yet. Sometimes you just have to flow, and you have to allow for the situation to guide, and for you to be taken through the middle way of chaos and structure, and then or chaos and order, and you have to just allow for the co-creative process to happen. Don't try to force it, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with another individual, and I think a human to human interaction is very, beautifully. It very beautifully illustrates this. Even and specifically in a dance, right? In a social dance, I love to use that as a comparison. The moment I try to confine the dance to a specific thing, is the moment that the follow just becomes a follow instead of a partner. And so, yeah, we'll leave it at that. And now, the reason we went through this exploration of what is creativity is because I wanted to see just how much we could connect everything, our understanding of creativity, and also now our understanding of business and service. Because when we can align those two, we create stability. The thing that will really help you out is, now that we have really explored this, it comes down to this conclusion that, basically everything is a creative process. The ability to make connections, to move people, to replicate nature, to connect different domains, to synthesize, to harmonize. All those things are really aspects that we're doing on the day-to-day. And so when we talk about business, what do you want to do? How can you make a creative business? Well, it's a business that is based on connection. It's a business that's based on nourishment, on emotion, on facilitation between others, and that, you can do anything from then on. And I think from what I've learned from my creative process, me putting myself out there, at the end of the day, I realized that people don't buy a product, they buy an emotion. And I think this was told to me like years ago when I first started. People buy on an emotional thing, right? They on an emotional case. And the only way to sell yourself or to create something is to gain that trust. And at the foundation of trust is going to be the ability to connect, the ability to move people, the ability to show up as yourself. And so when you can see every act that you're doing as a creative endeavor, then you don't put any limitations on all the projects that you're working on. So they can be big projects or small projects, but the fact that you are involved in that process of bringing those projects to life will give you all the fuel, all the energy, all the inspiration to continue to put out, deliver, and also serve people. So for me, it's been very simple. It's like, put yourself out there, have fun doing it, and then people will be drawn to that. And then you have your business, which has your product, the thing that you really believe is something that will serve them. And so then it becomes this process of both sides clashing together and continually refining itself to create the perfect business or the perfect product for you and your people. That might have been a lot, trying to condense it. Hopefully, it makes sense. I know there were some rough edges for sure, but I'm curious to see what you guys think. We have 6 minutes left. We can leave it off a question. If you guys have more questions, that can definitely be something that we can get into during the week or for next week. Yeah, let's start with Lucas, and then we'll go around Du, Paul, Fume. And we got 5 minutes, so we can keep it. Let's try to keep it within the minute.
I would like to go last. I would like to hear what you guys have to say first.
Awesome. Let's go with Du.
So, okay. I'm not quite sure what to say. Just gonna say what just came up.
Right.
I think last conversation I couldn't really connect last week because I felt like the topic wasn't like interesting to me, you know. But now that I reflect on it, I feel like, you know, the saying about like if you're at a party and you are bored, then you're not paying attention, you know. So I feel like, I don't know. I think the conversation started today, and I was like hesitant about like, oh, is this going to be the right conversation for me? But then the more I pay attention, I feel like the more I got out of it, and then I'm glad I paid attention today. So that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. I love it. Let's go ahead with Paul.
Yeah, I don't actually have any comments. Especially, I'm certainly not going to make an attempt and burn up the last 4 minutes, but I appreciate it.
I love it. Thank you, man. Fume, let's go ahead with you, bro.
Yeah, likewise. I don't really have anything additional to give. I think it was a good conversation regarding creativity. I don't think we touched upon some other aspects that you put out in the post, but I know I came late. Maybe we did, but I'm not sure.
No, yeah, there's definitely some more we could have gone into. I just, if you have any questions specific, just hit me up, bro, and then I could probably make a video or something on it.
All right, sounds perfect. Okay.
All right. Thank you, bro. All right, Lucas.
All right, I'm gonna finish on this then. Before the call, today I'm a bit sick, so I'm staying home, and I started watching Sly on Netflix, which is the documentary about Sylvester Stallone, from the way he created Rocky and Rambo, right? And again, you can see that all the blockbusters that he created, all the empires that he created with both fictions, were really created from his own story. You know, it was all elevated from his own suffering, from his own relationship with his dad, with his mom, with his childhood, and nobody wanted ever to listen to him. He's been training himself to repeat, sentences, accents, you know, imitating his role models and whoever he could copy for years. You know, being able to come up with those kind of characters and being able to embody them and to have such a success because people could actually feel the same thing that he felt, you know. And I was just, you know, like, I'm still halfway through this documentary, but I found it so inspiring, you know, that about not giving up, about, you know, continuing always to see different streams of informations, and, you know, always staying true to yourself too. And I think this was the main exercise that what Jose is pushing us to do, is about being always more authentic, finding the true version of ourselves, our true voice, our true core, instead of trying to be something that we're not, you know, even if we don't realize it yet. So it was just a very inspiring moment and very, very much aligned with all the journey that we all started together. So that's pretty much it. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm extremely happy with the outcome of this call. I think that it was a very beneficial conversation. Let's see. Yeah, if you guys have questions, I know Fuma mentioned there were a lot of things we didn't go over, but now I think that this really establishes the foundation for every single sequential step. And next month, we'll have plenty of opportunity. We have the next call on Friday too. We can always elaborate more and go deeper into these things, because I think there's so much to get from this. And then I'm going to individually, I thought this was a great call. If you guys are comfortable with me sharing it online, I would love to do that, just like for the world to see. But if you're not, it's completely fine. Completely respect it. I could always make a video within itself. But I'll just message you guys individually, see if you're cool with it. And then, yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for joining.
Sorry.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys. Take care. See you next week.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Take care.